good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to another episode of the Now Talk Show. I am your host, Dr. Nadine Wong. I am super excited. I'm always excited because we have such great, distinguished gentlemen in our community. And today we have another two. I think you've been following us that on the we following us regarding the story on 10 great minds that got together and produced or wrote co-author a book called The New Me. Now today we have another two distinguished gentlemen, two co-author of the very book. And we have with us Mr. Keith Hill Jr. and Mr. Jermaine Spencer. We ask you to welcome them on the Now Talk Show. Mr. Hale Jr. and Mr. Spencer. Once again, thank you
Yes.
for accepting the invitation from the Now Talk Show. I know that this is going to be another great set, like all the distinguished gentlemen before. And without further ado, please, I would like you to tell us a little bit about who you are. Now, I don't know if you're going to do toss up. I'm not sure if we should do the letter of the alphabet as to who to go first. But the question is, please tell us a little bit about who you are, how you were raised. So, Mr. Hill Jr., would you like to go first?
Sure, a little bit about who I am.
Yes,
Born in Toronto, Canada,
yes.
um, by my West Indian parents, both my Jamaican parents. But I was
Okay.
raised by my mother. She raised us, five of us in total,
Mm-hmm.
and can't say it was the worst, but it wasn't the easiest in terms of my struggles growing up. The best thing I
Right.
could say is in terms of my mother. She always made us. She never made us felt like we were in any struggle. Like there were certain things that
Mm-hmm.
I experienced that I look back in hindsight and I just say, wow, like she actually did that in the midst of going through whatever she was going through at the age that she was at. And I just
Mm-hmm.
felt never that there was a beat that was missing. And then when I grew up and I had to translate that into my own life, I always thought about my mother was doing this at this age and I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
this at this age. I can't even complain. So I
Right.
just always credit her to giving me that strength because it just always feels like the struggles that I had to deal with paled into comparison to what she had to deal with. So I just carried that throughout my life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's just a brief intro. I know there's so much more we could go into, but I'll just leave it there.
I'll let you know, Mr. Hill Jr., we are going to go there. We're going to get to the meat and potatoes. So, Mr. Spence, please
Yes, yes, yes.
tell us a little bit about who you, how you were raised and so on, please.
Yes. I immigrated to Canada when I was 8 years old from Jamaica.
Okay.
So I'm Jamaican Canadian. Um, so people always ask me, I don't really have the accent, but I could switch it up once in a while. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But I was brought here by my dad and was raised in Driftwood with my dad and my stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Life was kind of confusing for me growing up because when I left Jamaica at the age of 8, that was the last time I saw my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up without a mom and having a stepmother was difficult.
Yes.
It was extremely difficult
Mm-hmm.
to go through that and to be a teenager going through that, right? And growing up in Driftwood and in Toronto and on the streets and so
Mm-hmm.
that's just a little bit of my background in terms
Oh,
of how I was raised.
so ladies and gentlemen, get ready. There's a lot of meat and potatoes we're about to talk about. Did you hear these distinguished gentlemen, how they just introduced so sly, so smooth? Get ready, get ready, get ready.
We're ready. We're ready.
Oh
We're
my
ready.
goodness. Okay,
We
so
are ready.
and the fact that there's both of you, I want to get as much information. I know we're going to
Yeah.
talk about the book and so on, but you guys had very similar beginning in
Hmm.
terms of how you were raised, and there were life experiences. And you talk about you were raised in Driftwood, and for those who don't know, this is the West
Ah,
End, known as a very at-risk area.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
if you can share, tell us some of the influences, the suburb influences that were around you that you either were a part of or you made a conscious decision not to be a part of that in order you go forward? And this is a question for both men.
You can go first, Jermaine.
Well, thanks, brother Keith. I appreciate.
I went first last time. I'm just being curious.
Yeah, I appreciate it, brother. So, growing up in Driftwood for me, I had good times. I can't really, say that it was all bad or all confusing or all heavy. I did have good times, good memories, childhood memories. However, growing up in a place like that, there were definitely influences that were there. Definitely different forces and things because of the living situation, because it wasn't really an affluent area.
Okay.
And so I was raised, you would say, with the OGs, in the beginning stages of guys developing that negative attitude, So I saw a lot of, violence, fights, but it was more of the culture.
Okay.
At the same time, there was a community. But within the community, there were a lot of there was poverty, a lot of negative influences, and a lack of hope.
Okay.
So because there was not hope, guys tend to go towards the things that would, I guess, comfort them, right? And that is maybe the music, the drugs, the drinking. You know what I mean? And those are some of the things that we use to medicate the things that we didn't have.
Okay.
So those are, just to give you some examples of some of the influences.
Right. And you were able to overcome, or you?
Well, I wasn't able to overcome. We moved out.
Okay. Okay.
I got in trouble. I was getting into too much trouble, and my dad made a decision that we needed to move out of Driftwood, and we moved downtown Toronto, Christian Bloor.
Okay. So what type of trouble?
We moved into the city.
So what type of trouble? You didn't know what type of music to play? Like what type of trouble? What type of trouble?
Let's just say I was labeled as I was a behavioral kid. I was in the behavioral classroom growing up in Driftwood. The fights, trying to beat up teachers.
Okay.
Stealing gummy bears, you know what I mean? Like, the stuff that kids get into, right?
Not all kids now. Not all kids.
Well, not all kids. I don't know. We were big kids when we were. So we were getting in everybody's faces.
Stealing the gummy bears. Did this happen at Halloween? Because one of your co-author did say he did that. Around Halloween time. So were you doing this around Halloween time?
Nah, man. You just steal whenever you can. Like you go in, like 10 of us go in, 6 of us grab what we need to grab. They can't keep an eye on all of us.
Well, this is the convenience store. You're making reference.
The convenience store, yeah.
Okay, but your dad came in and says, "Okay, we need to change the circumstances here."
It was getting bad. Like I was the type of kid that would get suspended on the last day of school.
I'm sorry. Did you say the last day of school?
The last day of school. I'll never forget the story. We went to Wonderland, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, when are we gonna do this again?" So we took off. So we took off from the group, and we just did our own thing at Wonderland. And the teachers had to stay back to try to find us, and they found us eventually. It was late, and I got suspended the last day of school.
Okay, so that story in itself is a story. Now, for anyone who knows Wonderland, or just picture a theme park as a child with a lot of moving parts. Really, where did you guys go?
We took off, man. We just went to explore.
What did you discover then? What did you discover when you explored?
We discovered a lot of roller coaster rides. I think we stole some cotton candy.
Oh no!
Yeah, we had fun, and then the teacher came and found us. There was one teacher, I forgot her name, and she found us exploring the park, and brought us back and everything like that. And it was like the last day of school. I was sent home. I was suspended. There was a week left of school, and I was suspended. So how did your Jamaican parents?
discipline you with that?
Oh man, I think, you know, I don't remember, because I remember, as a kid, when you're gonna get beaten, I used to pad up, right? So I used to wear like 6 pajama shirts, maybe 7 underwear, just to make sure that, when you get the belt, the beating is not as intense.
It's soften the
You know what I mean?
blow.
Yeah, softens the blow a bit. But one time my dad tricked me. So I knew he was coming home, so I padded up. And the guy never did nothing, and I was sweating in the night, so I had to take everything off. He got me in the morning, man.
Yep. That sounds like, right on point. Okay, and for those who are, the word beaten is what we call here in North America discipline. Discipline
Well,
with a strap.
corporal punishment. That's what it was.
I know.
That's
Oh,
what it
wow.
was.
Oh, wow. And thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Junior, Mr. Hill, please.
Well, I like to always start off whenever I come after one of my brothers saying I'm the exception to the group. They always have their horror stories growing up and doing this and doing that. I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up mostly around white folks. As a matter of fact, my mother, when we did live in the so-called hood or whatever, it was at a very young age that she took us out, and she took us out preemptively. We were at what was it? Humber Creek and somewhere around that area, Humber Creek and Jane area or something like that. But I was very, very young. I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I'm the youngest of 5 children. But I remember just her telling us a story. Like, she saw what was going on around the neighborhood, and she just found Brampton as a safe place to bring her kids and grow them up so that we didn't get caught up. Because as rambunctious as we would have definitely been in the mix of anything that we could have gotten our hands on, which we did. But at the end of the day, it wasn't much going on in Brampton at the time. And being one of the few Black families at that time, one of the things that I struggled with the most was identity, just because it was a question of, you had the racism and you had everybody looking different than you. And then you just question, well, if they don't like me and I don't belong in this society, then, where do I belong? And then that ultimately led me on a journey of self-identity, because I literally went to 4 high schools in my career. Like, I literally just switched from one high school to the other. Me and my sister got kicked out of one, and then we just left Brampton and just went to Toronto. We went to the most ghettoest high school we could find, just because we knew we'd find our people. We ended up in Bathurst Heights. And
Wow, okay.
So that's where I graduated from. I used to commute from Brampton every morning, even basketball practice. My coach didn't even know it at the time. We had practice at 7 a.m. I'd hop on that go bus at like 5 and just walk from Yorkdale all the way to Lawrence Heights and just practice. But the whole purpose was because we felt like finally, and I say we because it was my dear sister who passed on, but we were like thick as thieves. And it was one of those situations where you just wanted to find somewhere that you belonged, and we found it there because everybody looked like us and we had similar mindsets, and it was just a sense of belonging. But even beyond that, it was a question of they didn't necessarily, when I started going to Bathurst Heights, I started realizing that they didn't necessarily see us. And when I say they, I mean the institution of the school and the society agenda. Like, I always like to tell this one story. We used to play basketball at Lawrence Heights Community Center, and somebody came by and was doing an article, and they were just watching us play basketball, and it was aggressive, and then when the article came out, I don't know if it was the Sun or the Star, but it was one of the major newspapers, and they said, if you don't get cut in the face, or if you don't have blood drawn from your body, don't you dare call foul in the notorious Lawrence Heights known as the jungle. And one of the community activists had to come and say, you can't do that, because you're going to make them identify themselves as such. So what I even realized, so when I got to Bathurst and I was looking for identity, it still didn't feel settling, because I realized it wasn't the people per se, it was the institution and the environment that was the problem. It wasn't necessarily my white colleagues and their parents that would call us the N-word. It was just the society and what we're dealing with today, the awakening that we're dealing with today with the systemic racism. It was an institutional thing, not necessarily a personal one-on-one thing. So a lot of my journey was just finding out who I was in the midst of all these different environments. I later moved on to live in New York for many, many years. And I just felt
Mm-hmm.
like even in these multiple environments, I found similarities. As much as they were different, Brampton,
Mm-hmm.
Toronto, and Brooklyn, as much as they were distinctly different environments, and I lived in each for pretty much equal amounts of time, it felt like even though they're different stages of life, there were so many similarities in the midst of
Mm-hmm.
it. So when I realized it wasn't about the environment
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna allow affect you, it's about you personally and
Right.
internally who you are and what you stand for, and therefore you could place like I feel like right now I could be placed in any environment and I'll
Right.
stand strong because now I know who I am and what I am. And there's nothing external that could change or affect that.
Wow. This is why these gentlemen are authors, because we're about to get right into it.
Oh,
Oh
we didn't
yeah.
get
I
into it already?
know.
I thought we were already in.
That was intro, man.
Oh, that
Oh,
was
that's the
it.
intro.
Okay. Well,
That
let's
was
go to
intro.
chapter one. So
Mm.
you guys met with Jeff. How did the initial connection come around? He sought you out, or you guys sought him out? Let's hear the connection, how the baby got conceived, and individually what chapter you wrote, really the weight of it, without giving too much of the book away.
Well, I was the last guy chosen to the roster.
Oh, okay.
I
Best for
was,
last.
yeah, best for last, whatever, man. I was the last guy. I was like maybe, what do you call him? The bench player. I'm coming off the bench. You know
Okay.
what I mean? So the starters were already chosen, and they got me off the bench somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But I know Jeff is connected to my brother-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's like a part of the family.
Okay.
And Jeff's two boys go to the same school as my daughter, and so in the mornings when we will walk our kids to school, we'll talk and talk about
Mm-hmm.
life and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then eventually he heard, because over the years of walking together, walking our kids to school, I
Mm-hmm.
shared some of my story with him. Then
Mm-hmm.
he approached me and he's like, "All right, Jermaine, you know what? You have a good story, man. Would you like to be a part of the project?" And
Mm-hmm.
at first I was like, "Man, I've never written anything. I like to talk, but I don't write." And then he said, "You could do it, man." So I was like, "All right, then I'll give it a shot." It
Mm-hmm.
was not easy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you that. It forced me to really see myself outside of myself. I don't know if that makes any
Ah,
sense, to
Of
go deep,
that,
course.
yes, that's
you know,
important.
and to
Mm-hmm.
pull stuff out of me I didn't know was even there. So
Mm-hmm.
the book definitely gave me an opportunity to grow in different places
Mm-hmm.
within my journey that I didn't know I could do. So
Right.
yeah, I thank Jeff for that opportunity.
So you just said something that is very important, to grow in places you didn't know.
Hmm.
So growth itself, really, what fruit have you gotten from your growth?
Well, it's one thing when you know your story. It's another
Mm-hmm.
thing when you're telling your story.
Okay.
Because when you tell your story, a lot of emotions come out of it. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things that you kind of buried. There's a lot of things that you laid to rest. There's a lot of things that you put away in
Mm-hmm.
storage. And then it's kind of like, as you're telling your story, you got to go back to that place and unpack that. And as you're unpacking that situation, or unpacking that incident, it,
Mm-hmm.
it it conjures up emotions that you buried for a long time, you
Wow.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's what it did to me. It really
Mm-hmm.
forced me to really relook at some of those issues, relook at some of those wounds, and relook at some of those hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was digging to write it, it was a very emotional process for me.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously within the emotion comes growth, because you're able to see yourself in a different light. So I'm not writing as the one that is being hurt, but the one that has recovered, and
Ah.
going back and looking at how I got hurt and how I overcame the hurt. So I'm seeing things now from a healthy perspective, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously when you're going through it, you're
Yes.
seeing it from a wounded perspective.
From a wounded perspective. That
Yeah.
that's amazing. So
Yeah.
is it fair to say the emotional pivotal point you had a release where you physically cried, or a scream, or a shout, or
I think I did all of those.
good?
I think I did. I was stuck. I was stuck at a particular place in the
Yes.
book.
Mhm.
And that was because not giving everything away. I haven't seen my mom in 30 years, right?
Wow.
30. The last time I saw her was when I was 8 years old. And
Mm.
so rehashing that journey and the pain of not seeing her and pretty much not knowing if she was dead or alive,
Mhm. Mhm.
that was emotional for me, you know. And I thank God that I was able to connect with her 2 years ago. I took a trip to Jamaica and I finally met her after 29 years or so. We
Mhm.
finally got a chance to connect. But
Mhm.
that was very hard for me to really go back to that place and to write that story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And your chapter is what number? Are you number 10, or
No, I'm chapter 2
your
or 3.
chapter 2?
Yes, I think I'm chapter 2 or chapter 3. I don't have the book on me.
I know that's why I was
Uh,
just
Well,
looking to see if I.
I haven't gotten
I
my
think,
copy
do you
yet.
have
I'm
the
still
book on
waiting.
you? I think I'm either chapter 2 or 3. I'm in the beginning.
You're in the
I'm in the,
beginning.
I'm
Isn't it
close to the
ironic?
beginning.
You said you were the last person, and then you're in the big. Oh, this is
I,
prophetic, I tell you.
I don't know, man. I don't
This is
know. Jeff
prophetic.
has a way. Jeff has a way of doing things. I don't know. He knows what he's doing.
I call him Moses.
He is
I call
definitely.
him Moses.
He's one of the greatest leaders I know.
That's
Trust me.
right. I call him Moses. Mr. Hill, please share
Yes.
your story.
First, I just want to echo what you just said about Jeff. I told him, Jeff, whatever you're doing, brother, you could just count me in because I trust him as far as his integrity as a man, integrity as a leader, and his integrity as an visionary. So,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't the reason why I became a part of this group because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know him that well at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We have a mutual friend by the name of Jelani. I mean, not Jelani, Julian. And
Mm-hmm.
Julian is a fellow police officer. And I was at a church in the youth leader capacity. And I was looking for
Mm-hmm.
some police officers to talk to some of the young kids. So I asked Julian, and he brought
Mm-hmm.
Jeff along. And then come to
Mm-hmm.
find out that Jeff's mother or aunt, I don't remember, but somebody in his life also was a member of that congregation. And then when I ended up writing a separate book from this, then
Mm-hmm.
she shared it with Jeff, and then he said, "Oh, I know him," and then we just stayed in touch after that point. So that's how we connected, just personally, and then just
Mm-hmm.
through my journey in promoting my book, he got a sense of who I was as far as the type of person that I was, the pedigree that I had, and then
Mm-hmm.
in the course of him doing what he was doing, we just stayed in
Mm-hmm.
touch. So when this project came up, it was just a natural fit. And funny story is, I said no at first. I think we all probably just were a little hesitant at first because the way he approached us, he was like, "You got to dig deep, man. You got to," and he wanted you to just be, what's the word? Vulnerable. That's what he kept
Yes,
Vulnerable.
on
Yeah.
saying.
yes, yes.
Be
Mm-hmm.
We got
vulnerable.
to talk about that because that's hard for men.
It
Oh,
is.
we're going to. We're
Yeah.
going to.
Yeah.
And that's why I think he wanted us to do it because we don't typically do it. You know what I mean? So at
Mm-hmm.
first I was like, I don't know. I just finished writing a book and I felt like I was vulnerable in that to go back and to dig deep again and even to add a different perspective. Like I felt like I poured my all out into that
Mm-hmm.
first piece of literature. So I said no, but then I ultimately said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna just figure it out. It's only one chapter. Let me figure it out. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
did figure it out, when I did write it, I still was a little hesitant because I remember I started writing about Sean Diddy Combs. I was like, Diddy struggled in this way, and Diddy had this
This
problem,
is
and
the rapper, right?
this is the rapper, yeah. But I
Okay.
wasn't I wasn't talking about me. I was deflecting to a celebrity, which the story was valid because of certain struggles. But then Jeff told me nobody wants to hear your opinion on Diddy. They want to hear you talk about you.
That's
And
right.
and
Mm-hmm.
then that's when I had to realize, like, Keith, you got to go in. And I literally
Mm-hmm.
just sat, thought, just
Mm-hmm.
contemplated, and I just started putting pen to paper, and it just took shape, and I was proud of the way it came out.
Mm-hmm.
I did expose some things that I haven't exposed before, but it was
Mm-hmm.
all for the purpose of just ultimately offering what you can. Because I don't know, and I'm sure Jermaine is the same way, but I mean, I'm sure all of us are the same way in the sense that we're doing this from even this interview to doing the book to doing a different speaking engagement to be contributors to society, because there's no real personal gain per se. The personal gain is knowing that someone else gained. So when I
Right.
realized that this was an opportunity that Jeff was presenting to me to have more exposure to be that kind of a contributor to society, I just said I had to do it, and I had to dig deep, and it was tough. Yeah, I think I was the last one to write. You might have been the last one to get chosen, but I was the last one to complete my
He, did-
manuscript.
he,
'Cause
he
I
was
had
in the
to.
starting lineup and he was still writing. Last guy came in and finished right before him, man.
Only because I rewrote it so many
You
times.
had
He's
to
like,
rewrite it. Yeah,
he
yeah.
kept on telling me, go deeper, brother. Go, no, that's not deep enough. You got more in you. And I was like, Jeff, come on, man. But he was right. And I had to just rewrite it like I said at least 3 or 4 times. I mean, totally scrap the beginning to the end and just go back at it and then do it 3 or 4 times until finally I was on a path, and then I just smoothed it out, and I'm proud of what I had to contribute to the book. So it was good. It was a good experience.
It's hard.
Gentlemen,
It's hard
on,
to
be-
dig. I'm telling you, it's really
It
hard.
is. It is. It so is.
on behalf of the Now Talk Show, we salute you.
Thank you.
What you have
Thank you.
done. I mean, I am just super excited to hear men express themselves and come back to what you highlight, Mr. Spencer, that vulnerability is not really associated with men.
Mm.
And you guys obviously had to become naked, had to become vulnerable in order to bring the story, to bring the roots, to bring the fruits. So you guys both work in the community and you work with children. So how do you think your book would influence the children, the boys, the girls, the community, and of course the parent, because you're going to talk to their parent, have some kind of an interaction? How do you think all of that correlation will come together?
Let me clarify first of all, I don't necessarily work in the community. I just volunteer when I can, but it's not my employment. But I know Jermaine is more hands-on in that.
Whether you're volunteering or not.
Oh, okay. No, I heard you say work in the
Okay.
community. I thought you meant employed.
Volunteer is a form of work.
Okay, I
Yeah.
got you. I
Okay,
got you.
I work with Canadian Mental Health in
Yes.
counseling, and I have a young adult ministry. I'm a
Yes.
young adult pastor, so I do work with young adults, young men and young women in the community. So your question is, how do we feel that the book will impact them, or
Children, yes.
yeah. So I think with the way we approach the book in opening ourselves, which was extremely hard for us, I think it will show people that even though it's hard to address your issues, it's possible and it's necessary. There's a saying that I'd say, and we talked about men being vulnerable. And this book, even though women could read this book and get something from it, we also wrote this book, even though, we did it for men, but women could also see into the heart of a man.
Yes.
In terms of the struggle
Yes.
that we endure when we are going through, because women and men go through things differently.
Clearly.
Because the cliche as a man, especially Caribbean men, you're crying, your parents tell you, "Where I cry for?"
Oh, there's that accent. There it is. There
Right?
it is.
Where I ball for? You want me to give you something for crying? Right? Like you get that. And then at the same time, you want to get emotional, but you got to suck it back up, right? You have to pull it in. So then you end up having hiccups because you're pulling in the tears. And so you go through life when you grow up as a man, remembering those words. What are you crying for? Why are you getting emotional? Suck it up. Move forward.
Right.
What you end up doing when you're doing that, you end up burying the wounds and you end up burying your hurts, right? Not realizing that those things are still there. There's still tender spots all over you. The only time you realize it is when someone comes and touches that wound or touches that tender spot, and then it hurts, and then you lash out. And a lot
Trigger.
of men don't realize where's that trigger coming from.
That's
It's
right.
because you've been burying those things for so long. So
Mhm.
there's a term that we use, and Keith, we say this all the time. We say leading and bleeding. So
Right.
we're leading wounded, we're
Mhm.
serving wounded, we're
Mhm.
fathering wounded, you
Mhm.
know, we're married and we're wounded.
Mhm.
And these things come out in our lives when our spouse or our partners or our friends touch the wound, and then
Mhm.
we lash out.
Mhm.
And you see that in a lot of men, because we just hold so much in, we carry so much weight, right?
Mhm.
And just going back to the vulnerability thing that you was talking about, it's as ironic that we look at on the surface vulnerability as a sign of weakness when it comes to men, but it actually takes strength to expose your vulnerability, to be
That's
able to
right.
stand there and still feel like I'm a man. Don't ever get it twisted or don't ever get it confused. But I could be, but I'm human. You understand? And the humanity part of the vulnerability is what takes strength to expose, because in one sense you're worried about being ridiculed, in one sense you're being worried about judged as something that you're not, but in the other sense it also prevents what Jermaine just described,
Mhm.
the bleeding and the sensitivity as far as what may you end up burying. So it takes a certain level of strength to be that kind of man, to be a healthy, balanced person who ultimately has the right perspective on life, I call it, just to give it a whole umbrella title, just to have the right perspective on life, because you can't be one dimensional. That's a robot. That's not a human. And
Right.
men sometimes we're told to be robots, whereas at the end of the day we're not. So it's counterproductive.
We're not told to be vulnerable as men. It's kind of like growing up as kids. You know, I remember playing in the playground getting punched, and it hurt. But because you don't want to look soft,
Yes.
you don't cry. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? I don't want to look soft. The guy punched me in the belly, it hurt. But
Mhm.
because I didn't want to look soft in front of people, I suck it up and I hold it in. Meanwhile, the whole time I'm in pain. And that's how we go through life, especially as Black men. We
Mhm.
get punched all the time.
Right.
You know, we get punched in society. We get punched at work. We get punched in neighborhoods. We get punched, you know, when we're interacting in the mall or wherever, because
Mhm.
people, you know, stigmatize us, and we
Mhm.
just suck it up. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And keep going. Unfortunately, that those things leak out here
Mhm.
and there in our lives, and then we perpetuate the stigma, right? Angry Black man, right?
And
Aggressive. We're
just to
aggressive.
add to that,
You know?
so my perspective is ultimately I agree, in terms of just you hold it in and then you ultimately end up lashing out. But the only
Mm,
counter to that is if you have, what's it called, like you take that pain and you channel it in a direction that's more productive.
mm,
So if
Right.
you use the pain and you use the hurt and you
mm,
channel it into something more productive, then it has that use. But the problem is we don't do that either often enough. We take the
Mhm.
pain and just bury it, and then it just becomes,
mm,
just hidden, something that explodes eventually. But if you just use it for something more productive, then it
Mhm.
has a different. You could. It's like you turning your pain into your power ultimately,
Right.
mm.
and but that just takes a psychological intention. It's not something that automatically happens. You have to be intentional about that.
Yeah,
That's
but
a
that's
mind.
if you learn how to do that though.
Well,
That's
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 what I
that's
mean. Yeah, that's
yeah.
a learned behavior. But I mean, but that's what
Mm,
I'm saying. We're not taught that either. But just
no.
just to juxtapose between the whole two schools of thought. One is just bearing it, and one is
Mhm.
using it.
Right.
Right.
It's true.
Well, I'll let you got a gentleman know. We just got a lady who said men who are vulnerable are quite sexy.
Could be. They could definitely be. It's a possibility. Yes.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. So yeah,
And you
you
see the
guys are getting
irony.
some good.
The irony is when you do things that are healthy for you, it proves it
Mm,
has healthy results, because that's the irony.
mm.
You'll think you're just walking around like I don't have no vulnerability, and you think that's the more attractive persona, whereas the
But
opposite
you,
is the truth.
with Black men, I feel like we're stuck in this weird place in terms of our masculinity.
Mm.
Because I've heard a story where there was a friend, and you know, which she's black and her husband's black, and she's like, well, he cries too much. You know what I mean? He's always crying. And it's like we're in this place as black men where we're supposed to be strong, right? We're not supposed to cry. Like, we're not supposed to show our emotions. We're supposed to be tough, right? And then when we do show our emotions, oh, you're too soft. You know, why you so soft, man?
And
Right?
that's what I always say.
Even women will go for the tough guy or the gangster looking. Well, in my circles,
not all women.
You know
not
what
all
I mean?
women.
And guys like me and Keith are, you know, you guys are the soft guys, right? You guys
Hey, don't call me soft.
Sorry, Keith is not soft. Keith is tough. Keith is the gangster from Brooklyn. Keith is the gangster from Brooklyn. My bad.
Gangster
My
from
bad.
Brampton. From Brampton, if that makes sense.
I'm Driftwood though. I'm Driftwood all day. Jane and Fitch.
Okay.
No, but I just want to add. Can I just add one last point to that?
Yes, please.
You know, we don't necessarily. That's why I just had to make the point of using the pain for power, because you don't want to be so sensitive and so soft and so fragile that you're mush. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, that's why I personally believe in using the pain for power. Like, expose the pain, but just at the moment say, you know what, that hurt, but you know what I'm gonna do because of that? I'm gonna do this, and just use it as a motivator. Use it as something that you could turn into power. So, you know, I think in some cases there might be the extreme case where the guy is just mush. You know, ultimately, whenever there's something that's overwhelming, then it's just an emotional, you know, detriment to him. And then, you know, women want a leader. They want someone who they could count on to be there as a formidable force. So my personal opinion is that expose the vulnerability, have the moment, but use it. Don't let it use you.
I think that's an excellent point. You know, one of the main reasons for this talk show, and this is my personal belief, that when a man speaks, he has the ability to shape the world. And this is why the platform was created. So it's not about whether you cry or you don't cry, but you must express yourself, because, you know, crying is still an emotion, just like laughing.
Of course.
And I think it comes down to balance. And, you know, women, not all the time. And again, we're all raised differently. And a lot of time, women, even though our makeup is more emotion, but how they were raised, they were taught that way. So it's a conversation for both men and women.
Right.
It's a conversation for both men and women. And one of the highlight about a program like this is you are now allowing us how to love you, how to know more about these very triggers, to be aware of it. And that's an important commodity that needs to be inoculated, injected in relationship, in our Black community, in communities, period, in order for us just to really have good communication. Because if we don't talk about these things and support you and comfort you, likewise, you do it the same for us, there's always going to be major conundrums. So at the end of the day, this is why this platform is created, because when a man speaks, he has the ability to shape the world. And, you know, we're talking about world leaders here. That's really all I see. So at the end of the day, listen, again, we salute you. We salute you. So here's a question that I ask every great man that has been on this show. Now, you guys are authors, and I know what it's like to write a book. You're focused, you're committed. Who influenced you, encouraged you, bring you the hot cup of tea in those cold nights, or when you just felt like you couldn't go? Is there a significant person, community, like who encouraged you at those pivotal points that you really needed an extra nudge?
Brother Keith?
Oh,
so if you have a life, or if you have,
I'll go. I could go, but you know, I give.
No. I could go. I was waiting to.
Right.
No, I mean the no-brainer answer is my wife. You know, at the end of the day, she supports me in anything that I do that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, that's it. But you know what I started doing the past couple of years? Like, I think out of the brothers that we wrote the book with, I'm the only one that never had a mentor. I think we had a conversation about that. Like, I never had somebody who said, little Keith this or little Keith that. I never had my father. So a lot of what I looked at was like artists and people of that nature. But what I started
Mm-hmm.
realizing recently is I do have mentors, and at times, like you just described, I resort to my mentors, and a lot of them don't know me. A lot of them are online, and a lot of them are just people that I refer to. So in those moments, I usually refer to some podcast, some kind of, book or some kind of motivational something that just gets
Mm-hmm.
me back on track. Because at the end of the day, what I've personally found is I know my triggers, and I know things that are, I guess, anti-triggers. I don't know what to call it, but things that get you
Called it
back on the
well.
rail. Sorry?
Yes. You said you called it well.
Yes, yes. So I refer to those things that just get me back on track. But I mean, the hot coffee in the middle of the night and the hot tea is definitely the wife. But I'm just thinking the non-traditional things. So.
That's
What?
okay. Mr. Spencer?
Yes, yes. I have my wife. I've had my wife. I've been married for 15 years. My wife knows me very well.
Mm-hmm.
She knows me very, very well. She knew me when I was a thug, and she knows me now as a pastor. So
Mm-hmm.
she stuck with me through thick and thin, you know.
Good woman.
She's been there, and I owe her the world.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I would have to say my faith in God. I had to really do some serious soul searching writing
Mm-hmm.
this book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I don't think I was ever this vulnerable, and at the same time with the understanding that I'm going to share this with the world.
Okay.
Because I don't know who got, I heard that, our book's very popular in the jails. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
prisoners are reading our book right now, and
Mm-hmm.
they're really getting a lot out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really had to lean on the Lord and lean on my faith as well as my wife to really get through in writing this book.
Wow. Well, and again, to the women who stand with such great men, we salute you on
Yes.
the Now Talk Show. I would like to take the opportunity to say that the Now Talk Show is sponsored by the Alabaster Wellness Clinic, where we specialize in integrative medicine, clinical counseling, and of course, trichology. Now, you have witnessed so many distinguished gentlemen on this platform. Should you know of a particular distinguished gentleman that, of course, has a story, we ask you please to share the information with him. The Now Talk Show, welcome, 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 welcome. All distinguished gentlemen to share their story because, as I said before, when a man speaks, he has the ability to shape the world. So, gentlemen, we're about coming down to the last point, and this is an important question. What would you tell your younger self now where you are today?
Whew.
You got that one, bro. I need a minute.
I, I
I
I
need a
hope you would
minute.
go first to give me some time to think about this one.
I need a minute.
This is wow, this is powerful. I would say, okay, I could go with this one. I would say trust, believe in yourself, have more confidence in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Um it's a tough question because as a man, especially as a young black man growing up,
Mm-hmm.
without significant role models or someone to look up to, it was extremely challenging to
Mm-hmm.
find to navigate me and the world.
Mm-hmm.
And like Keith says, you look at all these external things, and then you find your identity within those external things,
Mm-hmm.
and you will gravitate maybe towards a certain artist, or you will gravitate towards a certain rap artist or a certain actor, you know what I mean, and you kind of try to fit your image on them or put them on you, and you would
Mm-hmm.
walk around with that persona,
Mm-hmm.
right, or that bravado, and that just was not me.
Right.
um So what I would tell my young self, I would say, just be who you are, because people will love you exactly who you are. They will love your heart the way you are. They will love the way you talk. They will love the way you walk, the way you act,
Mm-hmm.
how you do things. People will just love you. Be yourself and be confident in your abilities and your gifts.
Okay.
Yeah.
What he said.
You know, I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Keith, come on, man. I know you.
Dude,
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
He's just
okay.
playing. Come on.
I know.
Unpredictable. No, unpredictable. No. You know what I was just thinking while I put everything that I wanted to put to any young person, including to my younger self, in my books, the 2 books that I wrote. So I'd have to echo just what I put in there. And the first one is just be a person of courage, like unadulterated courage, not jump out the window, have no common sense courage, but I mean, just within reason, make sure that you have a certain sense of fearlessness. Be a person of discipline, because oftentimes, especially nowadays, we know what we're supposed to do. We know exactly how to get to the finish line. We just have to have the discipline enough to just continue along the regimen of the path that'll take you to that finish line. And then lastly, which is what I wrote about in regards to new me, is in regards to having what's the way to put this? Like just to not be emotional in your decision making. I think I quoted it as, follow your heart, but pack your mind. Like just oftentimes we're too emotional, whether it's an emotional knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, I seen a sign when that girl walked by, that must mean that I'm supposed to be with her for the rest of my life. And you just emotionally go down that path. Or it could be something quite the opposite. You're just driving down the street and somebody cuts you off, and then now you're in road rage, and then you're in a physical altercation, and then it turns into something more detrimental, and then all because you let your emotional person get the best of you. So between those three things, be a person of courage, discipline, and just have your emotions in place.
Wow. Well, you gentlemen have shared up a banquet, saturated banquet of wealth and knowledge, as I was very confident that you would. Mr. Spence, I know you have a program for men. I would ask you to share a bit about that. And Mr. Hill, if there's any initiative that you're working on, this is the platform where we are promoting you as well. So please take turn and just share a little bit about your personal journey or initiatives that you're working on. If there is a social media link or email or so on, just to promote what you're doing, you could take a moment just to do that before we wrap up.
Okay, well, prior to COVID ramping up, I was running 3 homes with men with mental health and addictions issues. My program is called Hope Indoors Community Services, where we provide housing for men with mental health and addiction issues. But right now, those programs are on hold, and we're still in the development stages of developing day programming for adults with learning disability and special needs. So those are the 2 projects that I'm working on right now. Working with the city of Brampton, it's not easy, but with God's help and some favor, I hope things will work out.
I know.
The website is Hope Indoors, HOPENDOORS.com. So that's the website, HopeIndoors.com.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hill.
Within this past year, I became a board member of this organization called the Young Potential Fathers Initiative, and I'm just proud of what we stand for. It's basically an organization that speaks to fathers, whether they're young or just new fathers, or even potential fathers, and it's just a huge resource for anyone who's in that position of having difficulty navigating life as a new father, or even the concept of fatherhood, if it's something you're just expecting a new child, or if you're even dealing with issues when it comes to not having the ability to see your kid, your child. So we do things that are preemptive when it comes to having knowledge, resources, so that they're knowledgeable about how to navigate this world as a father, and also things that are supportive. If you have any legal issues, when it comes to just navigating the legal system as a father, you don't know your rights, or if you just even need a place to see your kid because you have I don't know what it's called, but where you can only see your child at a certain safe location. We provide a secure place. We provide that secure place at Lawrence and Western Road, where the facility is. So the young Young and Potential Fathers Initiative is the name of it. Our website
Mhm.
is being done over, but if you look YPF Initiative on all social media platforms, that's
Mhm.
YPF Initiative, you'll be able to find us.
Wow. Again, gentlemen, on behalf of the Now Talk Show, we salute you. And again, I just want to say thank you so very much for accepting our invitation to be on this platform to express yourself, your stories, and also your fresh jokes. I loved it. Absolutely loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it.
Yeah.
And
And we
once again,
salute you too for even giving this platform for us. So
Yes.
salute
Thank
to
you
you
so
as
much.
well.
And we
thank
appreciate the hard work that you're doing. It's amazing, and we thank you so much.
Absolutely. But
you very
I
much.
don't I'll be remiss if I didn't mention our book, which is you can find it at our website, newmemovement.com. That's KNEW
Mhm.
movement.com, newmemovement.com.
And the
And I'm
book is
still waiting
also
on my
on
copy.
Amazon. Pardon?
I'm still waiting on my copy.
Oh, really? You don't get?
Oh,
Okay, we'll send you one.
Oh,
who
I heard that from the first two.
well
We're
Well,
almost
you didn't
down
hear
to the
from me
last
and
two
Jermaine.
out of the 10.
well,
No, me and Jermaine
we'll
are
follow
different.
up. We'll follow up.
You're probably gonna end up with
Okay.
2 books now.
I know.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. The co-author of the new book titled, the book titled The New Me. And I urge you. I mean, this is the book. It's coming onto a holiday, and I mean, this would be a great stocking filler in terms of ringing your neighbor's door, leaving it on the step with a bow. In good faith, of course, keeping social distance. This will be a great, great, great gift that keeps on giving. And after the holiday, then we have the Valentine's and the Easter, and so many gathering events, and it will be a great conversation piece just to sit. I said to Jeff, how do you guys feel about, liaison with 10 women to write the second chapter? So
Yeah.
you never know. You
Nice.
never know.
10 men was hard, so maybe it'll be a little bit easier with women. I think women are a little bit more
You
organized.
never know. You never know. You never know. But I see different versions. I do see different versions. So don't stop. As I said, when a man speaks, he has the ability to shape the world. And men, you have offered more information to us women who want to know. I mean, this is how we learn. The only way a woman can know about a man is through a man. There's just no
Mm,
other way. So in your cry, in your
amen.
laughter, and all the behavioral there is, you're teaching us, and that's really what we need. This is how we'll communicate well, right? So
Exactly.
once again, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Now Talk Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nadine Wong, and again, have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Take care.